Hi everybody, my name is Catherine Tuttle. I'm the pastor of Wilbur Community Church in Wilbur, Washington. This video is a part of our ongoing series Together in Spirit. It's something that we began at the start of this COVID-19 crisis as a way to stay connected and together as a faith community. It's also been an opportunity for us to invite new friends to join us in this spiritual journey that we are all on. It's a place where we can pray together, we can support one another, and learn something about our Christian tradition. Now, on Wednesday evenings at our church, especially during Lent and Advent, we gather together in fellowship and in prayer. And so with that in mind, these Wednesday evening videos are centered on a different spiritual practice. And I've picked things that are easier to do at home, things that you don't need a lot of supplies for, you don't need special books for, except for the Bible. And so today's lesson is on Lectio Divina. So we will be reading the Bible together in a sacred way. Lectio Divina means sacred reading. And if that's something that's new to you, welcome. If that is something that is familiar to you, I'm glad that you are still joining us for this, as there's always a new thing that we can learn from reading scripture in this way, even if we've done it before. So thank you so much for joining me. Let's get started. I want to begin like I did last week by just checking in with all of you. How are you doing? How are you doing this week? What has been challenging for you? What has been life-giving? Let me know in the comments below what life has been like for you lately. It's very hard for me to be separated from my congregation like this, and I'm sure it's hard for my congregation to be separated from each other. Again, physically, although I feel like emotionally and spiritually we are still very much united. But that physical element is a challenge for me and for probably everyone in America right now. It's a challenge. And so just know that I continue to pray for you all, that I love you all, and I'm so glad that you are finding these videos and hopefully finding them helpful. A resource that we have at our church that a lot of people find helpful that just came in is our portals for prayer. Whenever I leave Bible study, a lot of people mention this, and I know that a lot of you really like this resource. And so if you didn't get a chance to pick up your booklet before the stay home, stay healthy orders came into play, know that we can deliver those to you. If you're in town locally, we can put them in your mailbox or in your door, or mail one out to you if you prefer that. But they are available for you if you didn't get a chance to pick one up. For this runs from April to June. And let's go ahead and get started with Lectio Divina, because this is it's going to be a little bit of a longer practice. Lectio Divina, like our centering prayer activity that we did last week, falls under the contemplative umbrella of prayer. Now, contemplative prayer is a different sort of prayer than we might be used to. There's not a lot of talking. There's not a lot of rote prayers that are written out. There's not a lot of words in general. It's a way that we dwell and are receptive to God, and that can make people a little bit uncomfortable. That can be a little bit new and unfamiliar. And if this isn't something that's been in your wheelhouse, I want to share a quote with you to kind of get us into the spirit of contemplative prayer. The author Marjorie Thompson, in her book Soul Feast, writes, "Every form of contemplative prayer aims to draw us past words and images to that mysterious place where God dwells in gracious union with the human soul." So that's pretty interesting to me and pretty compelling reason to want to engage or at least explore this style of prayer. Lectio Divina is definitely within that school, and Lectio Divina, as I mentioned in the introduction, means sacred reading. It's a sacred way to read scripture, and all that is really required is one, a Bible, and two, this idea that we have unhurried time and an open heart, that we will be able to be as receptive as we are able to be to how God might be at work in a particular moment through a particular means. Just like I did last week, I'm going to go over the different steps for how we can do this type of prayer together, and then we'll have an opportunity to practice that prayer together. But before I get into the steps of Lectio Divina, I do want to just briefly talk about what makes it different from other ways we might read the Bible. So when I'm writing a sermon, typically I like to do some historical context reading of the scriptures. So I'll look at what was the culture at the time, what were the customs at the time, what do scholars say about this particular passage. So that's one frame that we can use to look at the Bible. Another thing that I will do when I'm doing my own research is I might translate the Bible from Greek into English or from Hebrew into English. My Hebrew is really rusty, so I probably can't do that anymore. But that's another way that we can look at Scripture is through a linguistic lens. So what does a particular word mean, especially in the original language? How does that word help us interpret the passage? Another way we might look at the Bible is just to read it as a big sweeping story. So we might take an entire book of the Bible, like the book of Ruth, and just read it chapter 1 all the way through the end and think about the story as a whole. We might compare sections of the Old Testament to sections of the New Testament and see how they inform each other. We might just read the Bible in our own homes because we like a particular story or want to feel some comfort or hear some familiar words. There are just so many different reasons and ways that we can read the Bible. And so Lectio Divina is just one of those ways that we engage with Scripture. And the reason why I'm clarifying all of this and going over all these different ways is that when we start reading with the Lectio Divina mindset, we're going to set aside all that stuff about language, all that stuff about historical context, passages that aren't in this particular unit that we are reading together. And we're just going to focus on the words in front of us to start with. So the first step of this way of reading Scripture is called Lexio, or reading. Another author that I read also calls this attending, and I really like that idea of attending to the Word. And so we're going to read Psalm 130 together. That was one of our readings from last Sunday, and we didn't read it together, and then I immediately regretted not reading it together because it is such a beautiful psalm, and I feel like it's a really a part of Scripture that will speak to a lot of us with the situations that we find ourselves in right now. So we'll read we'll read Psalm 130 together, and we're going to read it slowly and gently. And when you're reading it, and if you're doing this on your own time, read it as if you're reading a love letter from a friend. That's kind of the mindset that we want to have. Like, we're just going to dwell with the words. And we'll read it more than once. And so with this first reading, I want you to be thinking about what God might be saying to you in this moment through these words. And just let your mind wander. The second step is called meditatio, or pondering. The meaning of meditation in this context uses an active mind. So the pondering of what God might be saying to me in this moment starts to become more active. And while not analyzing or exercising that biblical criticism, that historical context, the language context, The mind at this point starts to actively reflect on the text. We take into account how the text relates to feelings, hopes, memories, experiences, and intentions. And at this point, you may want to pull out a particular word or phrase that has caught your attention. And you might not even know why it's caught your attention. There's just a particular word or phrase that's sticking out to you. And so at the second step, meditatio, that's when we start to think about particular words or phrases that are hitting us extra hard. The third phase is oratio, and that means responding. And so this is where we respond in prayer. Prayer is said to flow out of meditation. So it is the cry of the heart to God, a cry that develops out of the meditation on the text. So oratio is our reply to what God might be saying to us in the Lexio and meditatio phases. We may cry out in pain, in frustration, in anger, or in joy, or gratitude, thanksgiving, or praise. There are a variety of responses that we can have in prayer. And then the fourth and final phase of Lectio Divina is contemplatio, and that's where we hear that it falls under this contemplative school of prayer. So this contemplatio phase is a time when we rest beyond all words, beyond thoughts and images, and just rest in the presence of God. So after a time of this engaging in the word and pondering the word and then praying, there is this time to just rest. And like other forms of contemplative prayer, this phase of Lexio is free from expectations, free from judgments or skills or effort. It's a time to simply be receptive. So those are the 4 phases of Lectio Divina. And the reasons I'm favoring the word phase over steps is that they don't necessarily have to follow the same order. If you are doing this on your own time, think of them as more fluid than just step 1, step 2, step 3, and that you might go back and forth between oratio and meditatio, or meditatio and contemplatio, and to just, again, it's more about being open to how the Spirit might be at work in a particular moment, being humble and receptive to what God might be saying to you in a particular moment. We focus so much on what we need to be saying to God in our prayers that it can be hard to remember that there needs to be space for God to say things to us. And so as we get ready to begin our time of prayer together, I ask you to just relax for a moment, take a moment to set aside your own agenda for what you might need in this exercise. Relaxation and peace can be parts of contemplation prayer. They can be things that we receive from contemplation prayer, but that's not the reason why we do it. It's sometimes a nice feature of it, but the reason why we do it is to be open to how God is speaking to us. So just take a moment and settle yourself in. I'm going to read for us Psalm 130. And again, don't focus too much on the literal meaning of the text, but see it as a part of a larger conversation with God. Okay, so let's begin with our Lexio phase. This is Psalm 130. Out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord. Lord, hear my voice. Let your ears be attentive to the voice of my supplications. If you, O Lord, should mark my iniquities, Lord, who could stand? But there is forgiveness with you, so that you may be revered. I wait for the Lord. My soul waits, and in his word I hope. My soul waits for the Lord, more than those who watch for the morning, more than those who watch for the morning. O Israel, hope in the Lord, for with the Lord there is steadfast love. With him is great power to redeem. It is he who will redeem Israel from all its iniquities. So just let those words sink in. You might want to think of your body as a cavern and let the words bounce around like echoes inside you. Let it resonate inside you. I'm going to read it one more time. And as we move into this next phase, the meditatio phase, maybe start pondering if there's a particular word or phrase that's coming out to you. Out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord. Lord, hear my voice. Let your ears be attentive to the voice of my supplication. If you, O Lord, should mark in my iniquities, Lord, who could stand? But there is forgiveness with you, so that you may be revered. I wait for the Lord, my soul waits, and in his word I hope. My soul waits for the Lord, more than those who watch for the morning, more than those who watch for the morning. O Israel, hope in the Lord, for with the Lord there is steadfast love. With him is great power to redeem. It is he who will redeem Israel from all its iniquities. So as you heard this a second time, what memories or thoughts are brought up to you? Maybe what images are brought to mind? What feelings? What do you identify with? Or what do you have trouble identifying with? What does God seem to be saying to you through this passage? See if there's a particular word or phrase that is sticking out to you. Now silently or aloud, let prayer emerge from this time. You may want to take a moment to write out your prayer if that's helpful for you. Allow your prayer to flow spontaneously from your heart. I'll just sit in silence here with you a minute. And finally, we release ourselves from any expectations or judgments, skill or effort of how we expected this time to go. And we simply rest in the presence of God. Stay here just a minute. when you emerge from this time of contemplation, find a word or phrase that carries the core message you have received, and take this out with you into the world, into your day, into your interactions with others, and into your times of solitude. Okay, so that is a brief introduction to the practice of Lectio Divina. And I'm curious if you can let me know in the comments below what that experience was like for you, if that's something that's new or different or something that's very familiar. Again, what I like about these contemplative prayer exercises is it's very easy, well, easy in some ways, easy to do in your own home. Again, you don't need fancy equipment, you don't need special books, you don't need a certain level of education. It's really accessible to pretty much anyone. And in this time where we are in our houses, and some of us with our families a lot, it's good to have a way to stay connected with our faith during a time that can be very stressful. Now, if this is a prayer exercise that really speaks to you and you want to engage with it even more, there's a book that a friend gave to me called Opening to God by David Brenner. And this uses this idea, these 4 phases of Lectio Divina, and it kind of reinterprets them in a prayer practice. So I think this is Jeff Crosby. I think this is from you. So thank you. This is from my internship, and I really do like this resource for prayer. And he knows how much I like contemplative prayer. So know that there are some additional resources, and you can always call or text or email me if you have any questions. These are kind of rough sketches for how these contemplative practices are supposed to go, and I hope that this is a tool that you can take out with you into your week. That's all I have for you today. I will have another video for you this Sunday. This Sunday is Palm and Passion Sunday, so we will have a special time of prayer together this coming Sunday. Until then, stay home, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time. Lectio Divina falls under the contemplative umbrella of prayer, just like our practice last week, which was, what did we do last week?